Avoiding a storm in the Colorado mountains, the trek. This morning, I felt an overwhelming sense of relaxation after sleeping in for a few hours. I wasn't feeling the urgency of the day, and technically I shouldn't be here right now. My goal was to leave by 8 to 8:30 a.m., so the extra time felt like a blessing. I indulged in a morning nap before finally waking up and savoring my leftover food. I still had several drinks from last night's adventure tucked away, ready for a quick refresh, the breakfast of champions. By mid-morning, I was ready to pack up and head out. I stopped at the gas station briefly before leaving town, but everything else was in order. Today, I'd be dropped off at the campground where I met up yesterday. From there, I'd follow the CDT, Colorado Department of Transportation, for nearly 15 miles, then switch to a lower route to avoid high-altitude risks during the storm. The forecast says rain is expected, so I'm hoping it doesn't get too heavy. The trail connected to the road right around here. When I left the hotel, I asked for a piece of cardboard to make a sign for hitchhiking. I walked down the road with the sign until someone pulled over. I didn't have the sign out, so he asked if I was okay and where I was going. I told him I needed to stop at the gas station, but was heading to Dumont Lake for a picnic. He was happy to take me both places. The guy was a bit of a character, and I was a tiny bit hesitant. He had a cute dog in the back of his car. Though he claimed to be a hiker, he didn't seem to fit the typical hiking persona. In the end, he was very kind, even if a bit off. He drove me to the gas station and then took me up to Dumont Lake. We had a great conversation on the way, and when the topic of my purpose came up, he was impressed. I walked by this beautiful field for a very long time. The colors were breathtaking. One funny moment happened when he first picked me up. The car was already running, so when I got out and returned, he had to restart it. It wasn't until this interaction that I realized the only way he could start his car was with a breathalyzer. On a bright note, my driver was sober, and I was glad to see that. Like many things in my life, this felt like a scene from a movie. The guy tried to give me a huge survival kit. It weighed only 2 to 3 pounds, so it was smart to keep it in the car. In another part of my life, I might not have said no, but this time I just thanked him and said I already had plenty of such items. He dropped me off at the picnic area where I met up yesterday. I continued along the path. Signage for the trailhead where I got back on today. The red line skirts outside the campground, but it's suggested to walk through to get a ride into town. Today, I walked through the campground and connected to a road. Eventually, I walked out to the highway, where the CDT followed for miles. I had service, so I managed to do some work. I even talked to Sparkle on the phone, which was a relief. Eventually, the trail turned onto a different road. I would follow it for another few miles. I definitely remember this route from last year. It was mostly paved in dirt, but the section I was missing was cool. I recall a big exposed climb where you reached a knife edge. There was a small shelter at the top, offering an incredible view. However, that spot would be terrifying in a storm. I hope this was a good call. There were waterways passing through the field alongside the road. Changing plans to navigate through weather and then the weather not changing at all is frustrating. But today, the weather isn't supposed to be bad. There's a chance of rain on and off throughout the day. Tomorrow, too, there'll be rain. But the storm isn't expected to pick up until tomorrow evening. It might still be snowing at higher elevations tonight, but tomorrow it's supposed to be worse. I just hope I can find a moment where I realize how glad I am I went this way. As I walked along the road, I did some work and listened to music. The fall foliage made it look beautiful. The road followed a river for a while, with fall colors filling the field. I continued past the area where the trail reconnected. After that, I followed the same highway for 5 more miles. Then I was going to turn onto a quieter road. Some dark clouds rolled in, but I was grateful they never turned into anything. When I first put my route into Gaia, they gave me 2 options. One led me on side roads, shaving miles off my total. But I felt that route wasn't ideal. Sometimes the map goes through private property or non-existent roads. You have to be careful with Gaia. I think it requires common sense and checking. I usually compare it to Google Maps. If I have service, I do. I stayed on the highway and eventually turned onto a quiet dirt road. Within an hour, I passed the road they wanted me to go on. Just like I expected. That route was a long private property. I saw a vehicle down the road. What a nightmare that would have been. I tried to avoid such situations whenever possible. Obviously, sometimes we accidentally end up in places you don't want to be. But the difference between brief trespassing and intentional actions is huge. Honestly, the weather was perfect today. I'm just curious to see how things play out over the next couple of days. It was a relief to be on a quiet dirt road. It seems like this must have been the old highway, but no one went down anymore, especially as the day started to wind down. Ahead was a small town named Rand, the only waypoint along my route, though there's nothing there except a post office and a general store, which won't be open. Rand will be near where I'll stop, but I promised myself earlier that I'll hike later into the evening if the weather is good. These cows literally ran toward me. They were excited to see me, then followed me down the fence line for a while. I was having so much fun with it. Passing cars probably thought it was crazy. On the off chance it rains all day tomorrow, I'll go as far as I can today, though that means a late night. I didn't start walking until 9:30 a.m. I was dropped off at the Dumont picnic area. At this point, walking into the dark feels like a way of life. It's nice to have that option again. My schedule has been pretty chaotic lately, but I think I've maintained a good balance and gotten enough sleep. It was a nice change of pace to get onto this quiet dirt road. Most of the time I had service on the dirt road, so I did a lot of work. A game warden stopped by and asked if I was okay. He was kind, and I briefly explained what was going on. Other people stopped too. One couple seemed very concerned. They asked if I was going up to Rand and told me where they had a cabin. They offered to stay nearby, but they thought I wouldn't make it that far. I had to explain the distance every day and that I'd likely pass the town, even though it was still quite far. The bright sunset over the sagebrush was exceptional. Last year, while on the CDT, I met another hiker named Yeehaw, a videographer and photographer. He made a beautiful PCT video after his hike a few years ago. He was recording a CDT documentary. It came out today. You can find it on YouTube, Trails of Life. I think the coolest part is how similar our journeys were. Weather, timing, and other factors were similar. I had service as I walked and the sun was just setting. I decided to watch the documentary. It was absolutely incredible. The funniest part was that we were in some of the clips, but no images of us made it into the film. Still, watching a scene and knowing you were there was cool. What a treat it is to watch the full evolution of a beautiful sunset. Around this time, I was watching one of the best sunsets ever. I could see the storm in the distance along the higher peaks. It created cool clouds and vibrant colors. Overall, it was an incredible sunset. After a while, I turned around and realized the best part was behind me the whole time. Sometimes you really need to turn around. When I finally turned around, this is what I saw. I watched the day come to an end as I continued along the road. Eventually, I popped out onto the main road again. This turned and brought me generally toward Rand. The road was quiet in the evening because there wasn't a large shoulder. I had miles to go to town. I passed the general store, which was closed. The town looked really cute. Just wow. At this point, I was tired and ready to stop, but I knew I should keep going. I was close to my daily mileage quota. The further, the better, though I had a strong thought about sleeping in the local post office. Post office lobbies are always open. I figured this town must have one. When I walked to buy, the building would have been perfect, but they had a sign saying you couldn't loiter inside because it was private property. It was ironic considering it was a post office. The lights were on 24/7. It was so nice and warm inside. I stood there for a few minutes and debated my entire life. It just didn't feel like the right idea, though. I bought a 10-pack of these yesterday, mostly because you had to buy them at Walmart. But I figured that puts me in a good position for bad weather. These things are amazing. I continued for another couple of miles after that. I wasn't sure what my options were besides the road, but I saw I'd eventually enter national forest land. That gave me some options. Luckily, I didn't have to go that far. Within 30 minutes to an hour of passing the post office, I arrived at an area with tons of aspen trees. They lined the side of the road between the road and nearby fence. When I walked into the aspens, there were lots of flat spots. It was perfect. I got in there and found the most incredible spot. There's a chance it'll rain, so I'd love to set up in the best place possible. I quickly set up my tent, and fortunately, the road was so quiet that no one drove by. Even if they had, it would have been tough to see me. Once in my tent, I got everything set up. I had service, which was amazing, so I stayed up for a while doing some work, but I'm hoping to start early tomorrow. I didn't want to stay up too late. I ended up going about 37 miles today. That means tomorrow I'll have 32 miles to reach the edge of Granby. Then another 3 to 6 miles to get further into town and out of town. There are plenty of places to stay in town, some closer, some farther. I'm not booking anything and just want to see how the weather plays out. If it's good, I'll go as far as I can. If you enjoyed this blog and would like to support my hike by buying me a soda or snack along the way, there's a Tip the Author button below. It links directly to my Venmo. Any and all support is incredibly appreciated.